Hare Krishna. Welcome everybody. We'll start our today's session by paying our obeisances to His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So we are in our journey for chapter 5, and we completed last week the first three sections of chapter 5. And today we'll be covering the last section, which is the fourth section, which is from verse 17 to 29. So this is comparably a short chapter. It just has 29 shlokas. Last time I'm just gonna quickly, touch base on some of the important content we had last time. Because of, I think, quite few of them couldn't attend it last time. So just a quick summary. So we are in our journey, right, in chapter 5. So just a gist, when we talk about a gist, chapter 2, what does it give us? We learned that it gives us our identity, right? It's the chapter. What can somebody tell me the title of the chapter 2? What was the name of the chapter of chapter 2?
Sankhya Yoga.
It was part of the chapter 2. But what was the name of the chapter 2? It is called as the contents of Gita summarized, because that chapter gives us a gist of all the contents of Gita. It gives us the topical, information. So yes, Sankhya Yoga was part of it, right? So we started the chapter. So why we are talking about identity, I think that's what you were answering, Hare Krishna ji. So because what is the identity? We learned from chapter 2 that we are not this body, but we are soul. Yeah, and our identity is, to serve Krishna, right? We are the servants of the servants of the servants of the servants of Krishna, right? So our constitutional position is to please Krishna by serving. Yeah. So that's our identity. Now, chapter 3 was Karma Yoga, right? Which highlighted to us the duty. Yeah, it talked about duty. Our duty, and we learned, the cycle of sacrifice, and Arjuna getting confused, and Nishkam Karma Yoga is the way, right? Krishna highlights, do your prescribed duties, right? Which is primarily Nishkam Karma. Then chapter 4, we concluded chapter 3 with Krishna introduced us to our greatest enemy, which is not outside, it is within us, which is lust, right? So this lust, how can it be overcome that? So that's where the chapter 4, roots it. So Krishna highlights that it's only by spiritual knowledge, right? Spiritual intelligence that we can overcome lust. So chapter 4 exclusively only talks about the transcendental knowledge, where Krishna highlights his appearance, Janma Karma Chaityam, the overall transcendental. Yeah. So now, when we know our identity, once we know who we are, we know what our prescribed duty is. Yes, we do that, and we have the knowledge, right? What do we in the end get? That is chapter 5. We attain peace. So chapter 5 talks about the peace formula, which we'll do today. Yeah, the last shloka especially highlights, we call it as a peace formula. So let's get started. Like I mentioned, we covered the first 3 sections last time, where we started with, again, Arjuna's confusion, right? Where he asks Krishna, he gets confused with the last 2 shlokas of 4th chapter, where we use, yoga sannyasta karmana. That word karmana and sannyas, Arjuna misunderstands it as karmana means sannyas karmana means give up, work itself. Whereas karmanam there, Krishna is referring to the fruits of work. Okay, so Arjuna, in the 41st verse of 4th chapter, Krishna talks about this, and then the 42nd verse itself, which he concludes 4th chapter, he mentions that stand up and fight. So that is what confuses Arjuna. These two verses are contradictory, because on one hand you're saying give up work, on the other hand you're again talking about stand up and fight. And that's what we started last time, that Krishna we are talking here, what was Krishna exactly referring to? Krishna was referring to giving up the results of work, not the work itself. Then we also saw how Krishna highlights to Arjuna, because Arjuna asked him, tell me Shreya. What is Shreya? Ultimately beneficial for you. Yeah. We learned Shreya is also, we see sometimes the reference of word as prayer. Prayer is nothing but short-term benefit, whereas Shreya is long-term benefit, ultimate benefit. And again, we saw in different verses last time how Arjuna is asking Krishna, Shreya, tell me what is Shreya for? Means what is ultimately beneficial. Yeah? Now we also learned a story of a person who got stranded in the island, right? And how he, by using his intelligence, he made his future bright. He was not looking at the short-term benefits he was getting. He was rather looking at the long term. How can I have a long-term benefit, right? And how he worked it around such a way that it worked for his ultimate good. Now, same with us. That's what we need to take away the message, that we should inquire with the right questions, right purpose of our life, right goal of our life, rather than just getting some short-term benefits. Say today I got a promotion, or we got a new house. We are aiming for that, but those are the short-term benefits. That's not our ultimate goal. So we have to look at the ultimate goal, right? Not the short-term goal, or not the short-term happiness. It's like a child getting happiness by playing with toys versus the happiness he gets, with studying. Which is the one which is, short-term he's getting happiness by playing with the toys. But long-term, what is more beneficial for him? It is the studying piece, right? So he will get that ultimate happiness from it. So, and why we are talking about Shreya? Because, of course, because Arjuna asked, but at the same time, to understand the purpose of Bhagavad-Gita. The whole purpose of Bhagavad-Gita is for our Shreya, our ultimate benefit, how we could achieve our ultimate goal. That's the purpose. Yeah. So that's what is the key for us to take. And then we learned the difference between these two, because that is where Arjuna got confused, right? We should have, Krishna highlights, we should have the spirit of renunciation in our work, right? That means we should work, but we should have the spirit of renunciation from the fruits of the work. So we should have that, rather than renunciating the work, which is sannyas of karma. Yeah, it's not karma sannyasa. Karma sannyasa is take the sannyasa, renounce from work. We have to look at karma phala sannyasa, which is the fruits out of that work. We have to renounce from fruits of that work. Yeah, so that's the piece. Yeah, so how can we get this attitude of renunciating from the fruits? By knowing actually, that nothing belongs to us. Anything we do, right? We do with using our brain, our senses, right? The naturally available resources, right? So does anything of this belong to us? No, but it is all given by Krishna, right? So when nothing factually, when we leave this body also, right? We are not taking anything along with us. So factually, nothing belongs to us, right? If we have that mindset, understand that, then that nothing belongs to anyone, then that will give us, that kick or that push to understand, then where is the question of actually renunciation? Because when we hear renunciation, it is like, oh, we have to detach from something. We have to leave. right? So it is painful at times. So it's the mindset of that natural, nothing belongs to us. That will help us to develop the spirit of renunciation while we are working. Yeah. So that is very important. So in the end, Krishna states that Nishkam Karmi Yoga, is better for Arjuna. Work and have the spirit of renunciation while you work. That is better for Arjuna. Yeah? Not rather renouncing the work. Because both ways you can attain liberation. Okay. So now this also was one of the slides we discussed last time, that just by renunciation, people have the mindset that they will achieve liberation. No, just by renunciation, that is not. That is part of it, even for people who prefer to take renunciation, right? The main thing with them is just taking renunciation, that is detachment of matter, it will not give you that happiness you're looking for, that internal content. You have to connect with Krishna. So detachment from matter, yes, but unless and until there is not an attachment to Krishna, to spiritual thing, then we will not get that happiness. Because we have, if we, like we discussed, we get everything from Krishna. So if he is the source of everything, how can we get happiness without having him part of something, right? So we have to have clearly, a mindset that we are not running away from the problems, which is mentioned here. This is from the purport, and Prabhupada nicely explains it, that we're not running away from the problem. We are rather, overcoming those problems, being dependent on Krishna, right? So slowly, and we start developing, it's about higher taste, which we'll also talk later today. In second chapter, we learned that verse, Param Drishtva Nivartate. That Param Drishtva, so that higher taste development, and as we get inclined to do our spiritual practice, our sadhana, we get naturally less inclined towards the material desire. And that's why we say spirituality is experiential. You will yourself experience, there might be some of the material, aspects where it must be attracting you before. But as you progress, you slowly see that it doesn't attract you the amount it was before. You slowly see yourself less inclined to do it. So that's how our attitude should be. We are going towards Krishna rather than thinking we are moving away from him. So that, okay. So with that, how should we live in this world? Because Arjuna asks Krishna, if you're asking me to work, then work causes bondage. So how do you think I should, a person should survive in this world? And Krishna gives beautiful example of a lotus flower, where he says that, try to be like a lotus flower. It is amidst the contamination, but still the leaf doesn't touch the water. So it is not contaminated, right? So it is a beautiful example which we have to, try to inculcate, because around us we'll see, we have family, friends, and some of it we would see that it is not, it is like a difficult place to be, right? So we have to try to be untouched, even being among them, we have to try to keep ourselves untouched by them, not being influenced, right? And that's what Krishna is asking Arjuna. You are in this war, Mahabharata war, crores of people, they lost their life, right? I was seeing, it was 64 million or 6 million yeah, it was 64 crore in Indian currency. They lost their lives. There were so many other living entities like, elephants, horses, So it's like, and so many thousands, were not to be found. They were misplaced. So it was, a heavy contamination, fully around Arjuna. But Krishna is asking Arjuna, don't be influenced. You should behave like a lotus flower. Yeah. So, and how can we do this? By continuing we learned akarma before, right? We can continue by being untouched by continuing and focusing on our akarma activities. Because performing akarma, which is keeping Krishna in center, it will do both the jobs for us. One is it will take us more towards Krishna, and the other side is it will let us not to be contaminated and influenced among the place where we are, right? So we have to perform our duty without attachment. That's and just not without attachment, but also with surrendering the results to Krishna. That should be our mindset. Yeah. So okay, and that's where we came. This was also the slide from last week, because these are important for us to understand. I'm revisiting these now. Now we learned about how each doer role is, right? And now the first thing for us to help renunciation is also that attitude, not renunciation as such, but the attitude of renunciation in our work is not to have that doership mentality, because this doership mentality is the one which pushes us more and more towards the material area, because we think I have done it, I'm putting all my effort, I have done this. So when we get the results of it, we want to own the whole piece. We want to take the whole credit of it. We want to be taking the ownership of it. From the doership mentality comes the ownership mentality. And when we are owning it, will think that I have put the effort, so I own the results. So I should be the only one who should enjoy the results, right? So that enjoyership mentality also comes. It's like a chain, right? So at the start itself, we have to keep reminding ourselves, like we learned the story of that small boy who wanted a chocolate, right? He went and asked his father, and the father said that, okay, I will give it. He gives the money to the child. And the child then, just by having the money, the child cannot go on his own to the market to buy. So a help helps him, right, to take him. And that is the material nature. So when the boy gets the chocolate and he says, oh, I owned it, so I have to enjoy it fully, he's keeping only himself as the credit taker, of the whole thing. No, without the father, without the help, he couldn't have been able to get that. So we should always have the thought process very clear that we are only desiring. The boy only desired to have the chocolate, right? So it's Krishna who sanctions it based on our desire and based on our past karma, as whether we deserve it or not, based on that. And then, the material nature facilitates it. It helps so that that thing happens to us and we get the result accordingly. Yeah. So it's very important to keep this in mind. Keep reminding ourselves that we are not the only doer. Yeah. There are other factors. Now, in the end, if we are doing work with attachment, that will cause bondage. But karma without attachment, it causes liberation. Yeah, we should not be attached to the results of our work, to results of that karma. Yeah. So it's not the work, because Arjuna raised this as a doubt. If I work, I'll get a bondage. No. So Krishna is highlighting here. It's not the work which attaches, which bonds you. It's rather the attachment, that binds you, not the work. So continue doing your work, yeah, without attachment. Yeah. Okay. Now we'll come to today's section, which is verse 17 to 29. And we ended last time with the 16th shloka. Yeah. So Hari Krishna ji, will you be able to read the 16th shloka?
Yeah, yes, Mother. ज्ञानेन तु तदज्ञानं येषां नाशितमात्मनः तेषामादित्यवत् ज्ञानं प्रकाशयति तत् परम्. When one when one is when one's ignorance is removed by knowledge, that spiritual knowledge reveals everything, as sun illuminates everything. And 5.17, तद्बद्ध यस्तदात्मा नस्तनिष्ठास्तपरायणाः गच्छन्त पुनरावृत्तिं ज्ञाननिर्धूतकल्मषाः. When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. Liberation by focusing on Supreme. Practical application of this section. A yogi can attain liberation by fixing his mind on the Supreme Lord. That involves tolerating temptations of the material senses and redirecting one's pleasure seeking propensity from matter to spirit or from outwards to inwards.
Thank you. Thank you, Hare Krishna Jila. So, 16th verse we ended last time. I'm putting it again here so that we can correlate it. Yeah. So it says that when one's ignorance is removed by knowledge, that spiritual knowledge reveals everything, as sun illuminates everything. Right? We have learned this in 4th chapter as well. That just like sun, there is a huge darkness. Just with a ray of sun, you'd start seeing things illuminated. Similarly, this knowledge, this transcendental knowledge, acts that for us, right? We as embodied beings, however, we are bewildered. Like we spoke, we think we are the doer, we are the owner, we are the enjoyer. But why? Because of the ignorance. And this ignorance is covered by what? This ignorance covers our knowledge, right? So, and Krishna states here in 16th verse that knowledge illuminates everything, and the ignorance is removed with the knowledge, and that's the importance of that transcendental knowledge. Once ignorance is completely removed, we tend to dovetail all our activities to Krishna, and that brings our peace. That is when we get the peace, which is the conclusion of this chapter. We'll see that later. Yeah. So we are starting today with showing that we think what we think. We think we are the doer, we have the ownership, and we have the enjoyership. And in the end, we'll see actually who is the person, who is the proprietor, who is the owner of everything. Yeah. So actually, why we get frustrated, again and again, because we tend to look at happiness, so-called. We are everybody looking at happiness, right? We want happiness. But what happens is we keep striving for it and we start getting frustrated. Why? Because we are actually looking at happiness, which is the right thing to look for, but in a wrong place, which is this material world. So real happiness is not within this material world outside, which is without, when we say it is outside, it is within us. We have learned it many times that without controlling, that the mind, senses, intelligence, we cannot attain Krishna consciousness. The prerequisite is controlling our mind, senses, and intelligence. And that's what the 17th verse shows us. That when one's intelligence, mind, faith, and shelter or refuge are all fixed in Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings, and through that complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation, right? So, tolerating, first lesson which Krishna gave us in 2nd chapter was that, the shloka of Matchless Kaunteya, Tam Stitikshashva Bharata. That's what he says. So, toleration is the key thing. We have to learn to tolerate. So our senses, mind, intelligence, why does it wander? Why is it not in our control? Because we don't have that power to tolerate. We have to learn to tolerate our temptations. That's the key. And this can only be done by our sadhana, our devotional practice. Completing that mind control chart which was given, right? That keeps us self-disciplined. which is one of the criteria. We'll learn later today what Krishna also highlights, that being self-disciplined is one of the key things for us to progress in our spiritual life. Because it's something which we have talked before in question answer session also, right? I think Rama Prabhuji had asked before, right? That, we know it, but sometimes we aren't. So it's all, that's why we say it's sadhana, right? We say practice, right? We keep practicing it, and then we see how gradually we see in ourselves in few months a huge difference with the same condition we are in versus to before versus now. We would have learned the art. We'll see why, because we have learned the art of tolerating, tolerating that temptations. Yeah. So overall, the final outcome of this chapter, like we say, is peace, to achieve peace. Okay. And how? By all the second, third, and fourth chapter function together. Here also we see, by knowing our identity, by performing our duties, which is Nishkam Karma Yoga, and then, having that knowledge, transcendental knowledge. Because without knowledge, we will be in ignorance. Yeah. So moving next then, what should we have? Yeah. So what should we do? So we have to start looking within rather than getting impacted from outside. Yeah. When we talk about within, we have to focus on our supreme. Yeah. So look for enjoyment within, and tolerate the external temptations. This will help us. Keep looking within and tolerate. Yeah. If we cannot, and how to look within? Meditation. And Krishna mentions that in chapter 6, quite a lot. And he is throughout. It's not that just in chapter 6 Krishna is mentioning, because we will highlight more chapter 6 about Ashtanga Yoga. Yeah. But Krishna, since the start, you'd see he has been highlighting, that remembering, chanting, performing these devotional service sadhana, chanting my name, that is the highlight. Yeah. So, and how to deal with this outside world? We have learned it with one example, but how to deal it? So now he's going to say in shloka number 8, which is going to talk about how to deal with the outside. How should we look out into the outside world? First of all, we should look within, right? And look for supreme. And when we look outside world, what should be? How should it be? So, Kavyaji, will you be able to recite this and say the English translation?
Yes. Vidya Vinay Sampane Brahmane Gavi Hastini Suni Chaiva Shvapake Panditah Sama Darshina. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahman, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater, outcast. Hare Krishna. Mataji, you are on mute.
Sorry, thank you.
Yes.
So thank you, Kavyaji. So yeah, I was just saying this is, one of the most important verses of 5th chapter. And we are going to recite this week. I'll send this for recitation for all of you so that you can send your recordings like always. So the shloka goes like Vidya Vinaya Sampanna, right? 2 qualities. Vidya, which is knowledge, Vinaya, which is humbleness. Yeah? Sampanna, in full. Yeah? Someone who is expert. Brahmane Gavi Hastini. Brahmane is Brahmana. The person who is in full knowledge and humble, right? He looks at Brahmana. Gavi means cow. Hastini means elephant. Shuni means dog. Yeah. Swapakecha means dog eater. Yeah. So such a person looks at Brahmana, cow, elephant, dog, and dog eater. Samadarshi means in equal vision. Yeah. So this, such a humble sage, how? By the virtue of true knowledge, yeah, and humble, yeah. These are 2 qualities. So this is how they look at, Such person is not looking at the outer skin, if that makes sense, right? That you look at somebody and, okay, this is a human, outer skin, right? And this is an animal. No, they don't look at the outer skin, but they look at the inner spirit. And what is that? They look at soul and super soul within each of them, like in the picture you see, right? This humble sage, he's able to see Krishna, the super soul, in a cow, in a boy, in an elephant, and even the dog, right? So he's looking at the inner spirit. So the vision is not external. He's looking at the inner, internal. This verse is very important because it shows how we, how a person who is looking inwards and trying to find pleasure inwards will look at this external world so such that a person is internally connected and externally responsible, right? So internally they are connected to the Supreme Self. That's why externally they are being responsible by seeing Supreme in every living entity, right? We have to understand that if such humble sage can be at peace, right? Because they're looking inward. And we have to also clearly understand that this thing in chapter 5, it can only be applied if we follow chapter 2, 3, and 4 teachings, which is perform your Nishkam Karma, Nishkam Karma Yoga, plus knowledge, because this resultant of this is peace. And that is the experience which is explained in chapter 5. To get this vision, which this humble sage has, we have to be very clear with our identity, our prescribed duty, and the knowledge. If we don't do Nishkam Karma, then this verse application is not possible. The vision itself is not possible, right? Because we are keeping self as center, not Krishna. Right? So these qualifications of a sage to get such vision, the knowledge and humbleness. Quite a lot of times we see that there may be people who have knowledge, but the humbleness is missing. Because knowledge, if you're not connected with Krishna, if you're not, then it might also lead to pride. So we have to, how can we be humble? The only, the best way to be humble is to keep reminding us. That's what we learned before. To realize that everything is given by Krishna. Everything is Krishna. That's how we can be humble. Otherwise, if we keep ourselves on the, upper hand, then we will keep thinking that it's I who did it. It's my efforts. I, me, myself is the center. But if we clearly see, Krishna has highlighted that we are not the only doer. He's not saying that we are not the doer at all. He's not saying that as well. We are, but each one of us have, there are other doers as well, right? So that's the thought process we should have, keep reminding ourselves, so that in eventually we get that vision. That should be our aim. Yeah. So moving further, what do we see in the picture here?
Truck, Mataji.
Truck, right? And who is riding it? Driving it, right? A driver, right? Truck driver. Now, what do we see here?
A bike rider.
Bike. And who is driving it?
Delivery person is there.
Right. So it's a bike driver, right?
Yeah.
So they both have, just because the truck person is huge, right? And the bike one is small. Does that mean that the truck doesn't have to care and they can just trash and go them, and they can hit and go them and they can just walk their own way without caring? No, right? They have to respect each other. Yeah. Thinking that it is also a person who is riding. right? At the end of the day, even though it is a small vehicle, but it's a person, it's a living entity, right? So they have to take care of each other on the roads. Yeah, they can be rash, but they cannot be just however they want, right? Just because you are in a big vehicle doesn't mean you can trample and go away anybody on the road which is smaller than. Right? Now, can you tell me what is this?
One person trying to stamp and
Yes. And yes, do we correlate this with the prior example?
as we are a higher living entity,
Yes.
we should not think it is smaller and we should stamp on them. We have rights to kill them, like that we should not think.
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to an ant, most people don't care, right? Why? Because they see that it's just an ant, nothing important. I cannot adjust. It doesn't have an important life. Yeah? And that's the thing. This vision, what we spoke about, 5.18, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Brahmane Tamilastini, right? So Panditaha Samadarshina, that's what comes in the end, right? So even the ant has a super soul, and we also. So the vision here is not with the external appearance. That's what I was talking. Skin. No, it's internal. That should be. That's the pure vision, right? And so people kill, and that's why people kill so many animals ruthlessly. Why? To satisfy their senses. They don't see them as living. They don't see that they are. They just see that they because they don't have the capacity like us. They are not higher in the land. They are killed just so that we can satisfy our tongue, right? So and because they don't have the thought process that they are also accompanied by their supreme father, which is Krishna. So when a child is alone, his peers or any naughty children, they might treat him hard. They can treat him how they want, based on what the situation is. But when the child is accompanied by the father, we see that it's a different approach altogether. People take care around to behave certain way with the child. Yeah? So the mentality of exploitation goes away. Let me exploit this. No. Yeah? The exploitation mentality goes when they see the father with the child. Right? So while killing animals, either for their pleasure or for eating them, due to irresponsibility, they don't see this living entity accompanied by their father, which is Krishna, the super soul. So we have to see every living entity, along with Krishna, right? And so overall, when someone has such a vision that they are all souls, and they have the vision that yes, all are souls, and they also have the vision that in all living entities there is a super soul. Yeah. When we have this mindset, the mindset of the mentality of exploitation goes away. We will not exploit. Okay. So yeah. So overall, we have spoken a lot about such sages. About self-realization. Right. Even in chapter 2, we learned about Sthita Prajna. Right. So self-realized soul. Right. We have been talking about self-realized souls. What exactly is self-realization? What is their vision? Yeah. They are a self-realized soul vision is what we learned. I'm a soul, and in all is a super soul. And what is their experience? They experience happiness within. Yeah. So we have seen the same thing in Sthita Prajna qualities also. Right? That their happiness inside, they find happiness inside. They are self-contented, right? They are equipoised. So a self-realized person vision is such, and their experiences, they work more internally, right? External temptations, they control. Yeah. So with that said, yeah, equal vision of a self-realized person. So I will maybe let Reshma ji, will you be able to read it?
Yes, Mataji. Ihaiva tairjitah sargo esham samye stitam manaha nirdosham hi samar brahma tasmad brahmani te stitah. People with equal vision conquer birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are situated in Brahman.
Thank you. So Brahman here refers to transcendence. They are in transcendental position. Yeah. So people with such equal vision, they conquer birth and death. Yeah, because they are working towards their ultimate goal, which is going back to Godhead, Krishna. And the next two verses talk about the symptoms of such a self-realized person. Yeah, that they don't rejoice something pleasant, they don't lament for something unpleasant, they're fixed in intelligence, they're unbewildered, knows the signs of God, situated in transcendence, not attracted to material sense pleasures, and enjoys the pleasure. And we can definitely take the example of Prabhupada. How he traveled in the cargo ship, at that age, he could have just lived in Vrindavan, in his close to 70s, he could have lived in Vrindavan like any other, once they retire, right? So he could have lived there happily, peacefully, but, he didn't, rejoice that, right? He wanted to spread Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message, right? He wanted to follow his spiritual masters, orders. He was very fixed in his intelligence, right? And he knew the signs of God. There were so many instances where he went there and he hardly had money, and he came across hippies, whom he had to work. He turned them into devotees, right? They were drug addicts, and they, all the kind of intoxication, you name it. He went across all that hurdles. Yeah? So there was nothing which attracted him, because everything was so material. He enjoyed. He's a great example for us for self-realization. So with that, so just a gist of the whole verses we did. So we spoke about, equal vision person. He's a self-realized person. Because he is at transcendence platform, which is Brahman platform, he conquers birth and death, right? And we learned about the symptoms of such a person, right? Now, here we have given a link, right, which is an important note, that detachment from external pressures and focusing inwards requires an understanding that material enjoyment is insubstantial and foolish, right? Everything in this material world is temporary. Yeah? Krishna states, in fact, in 8th chapter of Gita, he highlights as he calls it as Dukhalayam Ashashvatam. He calls this material world as that. Dukhalaya means full of miseries. Ashashvat means not permanent, temporary. Right? Krishna himself is telling that. Right? Like each city has a hospital, right, where you go and get cured. Right? So we are meant in this. It's a jail. It's a hospital. We have to try our best to come out of this hospital, right, by following, the prescribed pieces for us, right? So once we clearly understand that this material world is temporary, and no matter anything, any target you work towards, you will also experience practically in your life that we work towards a target, and while working on that target, we undergo miseries, frustration. And once you reach that target, it might be a momentary happiness. But after that, because we hit that target, it will account for some more miseries to come. Right? So we have to, these external pleasures, they seem very attractive to us. But, we have to learn the art of, liking the taste, to see within, with that. Right? Okay, so with that, that's what he's again going to highlight here, Krishna. What I mentioned in 8th chapter, similar, here, that he's, in the end, Krishna is highlighting this here, that sense enjoyment is ultimately distressful. Yeah. And this is also one of the important shlokas, of 5th chapter. So there are 3, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Yehi Samparsha, which is 5.22, and in the end 5.29. I will try to cover reciting all these 3 shlokas. Yeah? So, Yehi Samparsha Jabhoga Dukha Yonaya Evate Adi Antavantah Kaunteya Nateshu Ramate Buddhaha. An intelligent person does not take part in source of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man do not delight in it. Krishna, again and again, we have seen before, he is calling the person who is engaged in material senses as not intelligent. And we all are intelligent, right? We want to be, right? Called. We want to, right? So we are intelligent. That's why we are in this, we are discussing Bhagavad-Gita. We are taking out our time. How many people you would see over the weekend would take out the time to understand? It's not a science which is so easily available, it is easily available, but it's not easily digestible or easily taken, right? So it's, at time points, it's not even easily available. So we are all here because of our interest area to learn what Krishna is saying, right? So that we can tailor our life in a way. So that's what Krishna says here, that overall this material world, it's a source, it's a miserable place. And an intelligent person would never want to be in such a place of misery, right? Because everything here is temporary. Any pleasure we get, they are short-lived, right? They give us pain and trouble. And he says here, Buddhaha, Nateshu Ramate Buddhaha. Buddhaha means intelligent person. So if we are really intelligent, then why should we engage ourselves in sense pleasures, right? Which is the source of misery. That's what Krishna is saying. Right? So, yeah, 22nd verse, what we just learned. We can give an example of, I don't know if any of you know the story of Nalakuver and Manigriv. This is a Bhagavatam story. It's mentioned in Bhagavatam in the 10th canto. You might know that Krishna, there were 2 Arjuna trees in Krishna's courtyard, and Krishna, he crawled and he liberated them. Those 2 trees were Nalakuver and Manigriv. Yeah. So they were sons of Kuvera. They were demigods. They were sons of Kuvera. They had everything high, opulent things with them. They were really rich. They had everything. But in the because they were so materially opulent, with so much of material opulence, they underwent heavy intoxication. There was a this picture, what you see here, the story goes like, they were so heavily intoxicated in one of the gardens of Kailash, that when Narad Muni was passing by, their intoxication did not allow them to give the respects to Narad Muni, to cover themselves, because they were naked. Yeah, they were enjoying with women there. So Narad Muni had cursed them, as you will take birth as, because you are so, so much inclined to show your body, you will take the birth in the material world as trees, because they don't have clothes on, right? So they were cursed. So that's why this material opulence, it gives you that pleasure, but it's temporary. Ultimately, it turns to be miserable. Yeah. So, So if one knows that sense enjoyment brings distress, the urges of sense continues to exist. Yeah. So urges always continue to exist. It will keep getting attracted, right? Now, what can we do with that? So what can we do? We learned it. Okay. Tolerate it. That's what Krishna is saying in 23rd verse. Tolerate the agitations outside, external toleration and internal, happiness. Work, delight in work, internal. Right? So, Hari Krishna ji, will you be able to read 23rd shloka?
Yeah, yes, Matan. शक्नोति हैव यः शोढुं प्राक्शरीरविमोक्षणात् कामक्रोधोद्भवं वेगं स युक्तः स सुखी नरः. Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world. Tolerating agitations and retiring from external engagements that give superficial happiness are possible when one has a higher taste or religious happiness within.
Thank you. So, like I said, the first lesson of Bhagavad-Gita in 2nd chapter, Krishna gave was this: learn to tolerate, learn the art of tolerate, right? And 5th chapter also we see it again and again. This is the second time he is also saying it, right? Tolerate is the skill, yeah. So, and the other thing here is important is tolerating the agitations outside, yeah, externally, and working internally, towards the connection towards the super soul, and that gives us happiness. But this is only possible, like we learned before, if just tolerating or just detachment, trying to detach, run away from material matter, it will not help. Connecting with Krishna, connecting with the super soul internally, that is important. In parallel, that happens, right? Now, when we connect that, we get higher taste, right? That's what we mentioned, param drishtva nivartate, right? Param drishtva, that higher taste. Once you get that taste, it's like dry chapati versus gulab jamun. That's what we say. Dry chapati is this material. It's once you taste gulab jamun, which is a higher taste, you will realize that, oh, you were spending life in feeling happy in that dry chapati only. You feel that, oh, this is tasty. Unless you don't taste higher taste, you will feel whatever you are getting, it's nice only. So we have to try to develop the taste for gulab jamun, not into dry chapati, right? So that higher taste is got, how? By, again, the main thing again and again is we can get that taste by following our sadhana, right? By doing our devotional service. Then we start feeling that taste. We develop that taste. Yeah, it's not possible by, we call them as armchair philosophers, right? Who just speak, who have the knowledge, but they just speak, but they are not applying that in their life. They are not practicing it. They are not living it. It will not come. Prabhupada, used to say that if you sell something very pure, it will sell. You have to have that purity yourself to sell something, to make somebody else, convinced about something. So you only after you are applying that personally, application in your day-to-day life, then you will be able to get the strength, to bear that external temptation. Just by theoretically understanding Bhagavad-Gita, okay, let me know so that I can tell others, or so that I can be, whatever perceptions I had, I can conclude it. That will not help us. Yes, that is better than at least those who don't do it all, right? It's definitely a step further towards Krishna. But unless and until we don't apply it practically, we say chanting, you have to have focus, and but to do that, You have to have your sadhana. You have to get up early in the morning. Why do we say Brahma Muhurat? That's the best time to chant. Because those distractions, that mode of passion is less. So you're able to focus more. And the more you get the time to focus, you'll be able to see that externally these temptations don't, and you start getting that param drishtva, that higher taste for us. Yeah. So it is the real wealth, learnings from Bhagavad-Gita, but only when you apply it in your life, you'll see the difference. Otherwise, it will be just theoretical. Yeah. So 24th verse is exactly what we spoke. 23rd, Krishna is saying tolerate it. Tolerate the external temptations. 24th, he's saying, and delight inwards. Yeah. One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. Yeah. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. Yeah? And we learned this, right? Liberation. It is not necessary that a person only after death he can be liberated, right? He can be liberated within the same body, living. Right? That's what Krishna is saying. If the person is started looking, such self-realized souls, when they already have that internal delight, right? So they are already liberated within that same body. Okay. So yeah, and what we need to get in there, sadhana, practice. Sadhana is the key. So 25th shloka, Krishna talks about those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. So this chart, that's why it's very important for us. When we are made to document something, it's our natural tendency, we are extra careful. Whether it is as simple as writing some message to somebody, email to somebody, anything. Whereas talking on phone, when we know something is not being, done, you're more, you go with the flow of that, right? Similarly, this sadhana chart, just because you know that you yourself can see how you did in past month, it gives a check for yourself. And that makes you, realize that, oh, I should do better. Unless you don't have something in front of you in written, it's difficult to look within. That's why, this sadhana chart is very important for us ourselves, for our own purification, to continue. Yeah. So it gives you a kind of healthy, I have my, both the kids, they have their sadhana chart, and they have stuck it on the wall and they complete it every day. And they both, because there is a certain time within which if they chant, they get extra marks. And if they chant extra rounds, they get extra marks. If my son sees my daughter doing extra or getting extra points, he drives himself to do it. So it's like, it's a healthy thing, towards Krishna. So engaging your senses in doing something in Krishna, right? So this mind control chart, I would again, because this is coming up again on this, I would request you all to maintain your mind control chart, because as you see 3 months down the lane, you would see that how you were in the first month versus your third month. Yeah. So it is important check for us to reach that goal. Yeah? And Krishna is also talking here about just not self, but also welfare of other living beings. What do we do in these book distributions, these Gita courses we have, right? It is like to help people to achieve that ultimate. While we do these book distributions on the streets, we get different kind of responses. Some even don't care, and they don't look at you, but that's the thing. Unless you don't serve, you will not get purified. That ego, that pride, what you have in yourself, oh, I'm working this as in this in the company, that will come down when you are going on the streets and trying to spread that Krishna, right? So it is key for us, to avoid. So 26th verse, those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly enduring for perfection, are assured for liberation in the Supreme. In very near future, it's not far. Yeah, but we have to be self-disciplined. This is what I was saying. We have to follow the do's and the don'ts. Yeah, we have to follow the 4 regulated principles, right? Yeah, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit relations. Yeah, these are the pillars, and these are not coming from anywhere. It's not that Prabhupada just said it. It's coming from Bhagavatam. You will, yeah, at certain time point, if you hear any lectures or in due course, Bhagavatam clearly state these 4 regulated principles. Yeah, these pillars. Yeah? So self-discipline is the key, and consistency is the key. When we talk about discipline, it's not about I will start 16 rounds today and I will do it, so that maybe my mind control chart looks very nice, or I'm able to, feel happy with it, right? But you may start with suddenly that high level, but eventually, if you're not consistent, you will drop the ball. So anything in spirituality, it has to be gradual, but the key is also consistency. If there is no consistency, then you will lose the ball. Yeah. Then that higher taste, development of that higher taste goes. So consistency is the key. Yeah. So just on the last 2-3 verses now, 27th and 28th verse, Krishna talks, basically Arjuna asks Krishna, then if you want me to, you are asking me to work. At the same time, you're asking me not to be a yogi, not to renounce. So how should I work? This is the club of all these verses, right? On one hand, Krishna is telling Arjuna that, work. But on the other side, he's saying, don't renounce, don't be a yogi. So Krishna said, so Arjuna is asking, again, the confusion a little bit. So now Krishna is saying, Krishna clarifies here that be a yogi does not mean directly Ashtanga or Dhyan yoga, or a sannyasi. But yes, Ashtanga yogi can also achieve liberation. They can also achieve. It is a authorized path in the ladder, right? Yoga ladder. But it is a difficult path, right? We see in Bhagavatam, Krishna clearly, we see that it being highlighted that yes, Ashtanga yogi is an authorized path, but it was something which was in Satyuga, in prior yuga. But when we are talking about Kali Yuga, where our mind gets distracted for every tiny bit here and there, Kali Yuga, that is not the preferred ladder. Just because it's not the preferred ladder does not mean that it will not take you to the ultimate. No, it is an authorized ladder in the yoga ladder. But for Kali Yuga, Harinam Kirtan. Yeah? So these are the kind of seed verses for 6th chapter. Because 6th chapter, Krishna talks about Ashtanga. That's the title of the chapter, Ashtanga, right? So, yeah. So, Sparshan Kritva Bahirbhamyan Chakshushchaivantare Bhu Pranapano Samam Kritva Nachabhantara Charino. So the meaning, is shutting out all the external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the 2 eyebrows, and then suspending the inward and outward breathe within the nostril, and thus controlling the mind, sense, and intelligence. The transcendentalist aiming at liberation becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. Now, when we hear all these, concentrating between the eyebrows, keeping our eyes closed, nostrils, what do you feel? Is it doable for us? No, right? I mean, just hearing sounds so scary. So doing it that's why, because our level of intelligence in Kali Yuga people is so low. Our tolerating capacity is low. Everything is low. So this is beyond our capacity even to imagine that somebody does, right? But so that's why we will learn in next chapter. Krishna, as usual, very beautifully he explains. He starts Ashtanga Yoga, showing us what are the different. So why is it called Ashtanga? It has Ashtang. Ashtang. Ashta means 8 angas. So those 8 angas are Yama, Niyama, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. the Ashtanga Yoga in today's world, we'll see even in our ACS layout, right? Just in front of that, there's an Ashtanga Yoga center, right? So we'll see several Ashtanga Yoga centers nowadays. It's the most, what do you call it, as happening thing, right? But when I would not say all of them that, but most of them, when we talk about Ashtanga Yoga, it is more of sitting in specific asana. It starts with the third stage, asana, right? It starts like you have to have certain posture of the body. You have to calm down, control your breath. Pranayam is the most famous one as well, the fourth stage, which is right. But they tend to miss the first two, which is yama and niyama. Yama and niyama are the do's and the don'ts. First, a yogi should follow those do's and don'ts, like following the regulative principles, doing your chanting, reading, hearing, all the sadhana. That is the preliminary prerequisite for Ashtanga yogis. But in today's world, it's Kali Yuga, right? We go shortcut. Directly, it is going to asana and pranayam and other stuff, right? And if you're not purified, if you don't stop your do's and don'ts, you're not purified enough to go to the next stage. It will just become a show bottle mechanism. That's what we call it. So that is not what Krishna says. Krishna exclusively explains in 6th chapter that these are the 8. Only when you go stepwise, you are eligible for the next. So and the last verse Krishna then concludes is the peace formula, right? Does anyone know this verse? Because we have spoken about this verse in 9 sessions in our prior classes quite a lot of times. Do any of you want to recite this?
Yes, Mataji. Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarva bhutanam gnatva mam shantim rachati. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangas of material miseries.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. So, Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Surudam Sarvabhutanam Jnatva Mam Shantim Rachati. Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam. So, Bhoktaram he's the beneficiary, right? Yagnatapasam. Yagna means sacrifice. Tapasam are the penances and austerities, right? So he is the ultimate beneficiary of all the sacrifices we do. Who? Krishna. Yeah. Sarva Loka Maheshwar. He is declaring it that he is the Sarva Loka, all the planets. He is the Maheshwara. He is the Supreme Lord. Yeah. Surudam Sarva Bhutanam. Surudha. Rudha means heart. Yeah. So Sarva Bhutanam. Bhutanam means living entities. Right? He is well-wisher of all the living entities. He is the most well-wisher, supreme well-wisher. Jnatva mam shantim rachati. The person who knows this, understand this, that I am the ultimate beneficiary, I am the supreme Lord, Sarvaloka Maheshwara, and I am the most well-wisher, supreme well-wisher of that living entity. He will attain shantim rachati, peace. That's the peace formula. Okay. Now, a bit more, because these are the 3 factors. So first is Bhoktaram. We have to understand Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. Bhoktaram Yajna. Yeah. So our job is to perform the Yajna for Krishna. He is the Bhokta. We are not the Bhokta. Yeah. That doership mentality. So we are not, right? So Bhoktaram, he is the supreme enjoyer. Sarva Loka Maheshwara. He is the supreme Lord. So he is the supreme controller of all the planets, he's saying. Sarva Loka. Yeah. Suridam Sarva Bhutanam. Suridam. Yeah. So supreme well-wisher. Yeah, something bad happens to us, we think, why is Krishna doing this to us? No, it is for our ultimate benefit. He has the vision, say a line, yeah, a straight line. A straight line is made up of what? Many dots, right? So this might have 100, 1000 dots, a straight line. Now each dot represents, say, each life. We have taken millions of such, right? So we have the understanding of that that particular dot where we are right now, of that one life. But Krishna has the vision of the whole line, not only of the past dots, but also of the future, right? So we should have that faith. That's the key thing here, that if something is happening to us, he is the supreme well-wisher. It is happening for my own good, because he has the vision of all our karmas and activities and swabhava in past, not us. Yeah. So gauging just by this some instant, what to talk about previous life, we wouldn't even remember what we did in our previous few years back. We don't remember everything of ours, and we have the mentality that if I'm doing, I'm done. So how will we see our critic own? We cannot, right? So supreme enjoyer, Brahmaji very nicely mentions this in his prayers in Brahma Samhita. Yeah. Ishwaraha Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govindaha Sarva Karana Karanam. So for each of these, we are trying to give one example. Yeah, supreme enjoyer. Brahmaji himself is stating in Brahma Samhita that Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. Yeah, Parama Krishna, Param. Out of all other Ishwara, Parama, he is Krishna. Yeah, he has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. Yeah, what we call transcendental body. He is the origin of all. Yeah, Anadir Adir Govindi, Anadi. Yeah, he does not have a start or an end. Yeah, so he has no other origin, and he's the prime cause of all causes. Sarva Karana Karana. Of all the causes, he is the cause. Yeah. So prayers of Brahmaji. Yeah. So if Krishna is the cause of everything, why wouldn't be he the enjoyer and owner of everything? He has to be the enjoyer and owner of everything. Yeah. See, in Bhagavatam, very beautifully it is mentioned. I don't remember whose prayers it was, but it's very beautifully mentioned that if we see everything in this world related to Krishna, then we understand. Then we are, yeah. But if we see anything not related to Krishna, it is worthless. Even though in this material world it might be heavy worth, but if we are not seeing it in relation with Krishna, it is worthless. It is of no value. Only things which we see in this world related to Krishna, then it has a value. Otherwise, it won't. Yeah. Now, the second factor was supreme enjoyer, then supreme controller, means proprietor, owner, right? Whom we see in the photos here, in the images.
Hiranyakashipu, Prahlada,
and Hitler, right? Hiranyakashipu, yeah, he wanted to own everything. He wanted to be the, proprietor of everything. Ultimately, what happened? Krishna came and, he was. And same with Hitler. He wanted to control everything. He had so many strategies. He spent, every day and night. In the end, what happened? Again, miserable thing. He attempted suicide, right? So it's very clear. Then rather than having the thought process of this is mine, which both Hiranyakashipu and Hitler had, I want this to be mine, I want this to be mine. It should be that we should have a clear mentality that everything is Krishna's. And it's Krishna's mercy that he has given some power to me to take care of this. If you are a leader, then you're given the power by Krishna to take care of your citizens, right? Rather than thinking they are mine. So don't have that Hiranyakashipu mentality or Ravana mentality. That's what we call it. Yeah. And then the last one is supreme well-wisher, right? So we have seen several examples of Krishna's Bhakti Vatsalya, right? He is a supreme well-wisher, be it as a charioteer, as washing the feet of Sudama. He is not, even though he's a king, he doesn't see that, right? For his devotees, he goes to any extent, providing sari to Draupadi and also lifting Draupadi. These are the famous examples. I would like to conclude with when we talk about well-wisher, we should have that faith, right? I'll conclude with a story, a short story where it is about a girl who is traveling in a plane, and she is going to another destination, from one destination to another. Now, suddenly, while the plane is up in the air at certain height, there is a turbulence which has happened. And, things, alarm starts, here and there. Things are really messy. They start getting messy. And alerts start coming up. So everybody in the plane is worried. They are like moving here and there, palpitating, and they are so worried, what would happen. There was one girl who was sitting near the window and she was least affected. She didn't make a move. She was relaxed. She was sitting. And one person comes and asks her, how come you're sitting so, posed? You're like, nothing is impacting. Why? And then she says that, the pilot of this plane is my father. So I'm sure that, he will not, have even a single scratch on me. He will make sure that I am taken care of. So that is the trust which she had. And we should have that trust on Krishna, right? Trust is the key. Because it is this trust which can bring within us the patience, to win over our false pride also. Yeah. So, right. So with that said, yes, the chapter conclusion was attaining peace. And with all this understanding that Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer, ultimate controller and supreme well-wisher, right? We will attain peace, right? So we have to understand the meaning of peace is just not the word, right? Whole life we run around to secure so many things in our life. And when to get that peace. And when we die, we will see most of the people, they write rest in peace, right? That's the weather. R.I.P., R.I.P., they send. May your soul rest in peace and all of that. Now it's strange, that whole life we struggle to get that peace. But when only after death, people will start wishing us that we at peace. So is it of use? No. No one guides us or says to us, helps us that how can we get peace while living in this world. And that is what Bhagavad-Gita teaches us. How can we get that peace even living in this world? That's the key. And that's what 5th chapter gives us. Yeah. With that, we will stop today here.